Hello, welcome to Examining Fictional Heroes and the Authors Behind Them. My name is Wayne Browder. As you can probably tell already, I'm still suffering with the effects of bronchitis. My voice is still not very clear, and I could have issues with coughing. So, I'm going to continue with the subject of second chances and also continue with my original intent of dividing this into segments. They'll be shorter that way, which will make it easier for me to get through them, and it will also allow me to read more of the text of the books that I've chosen to discuss this topic. The first one that I'm going to do tonight will be Flint by Louis L'Amour. I know a lot of people really like this book, and I understand it. I believe it's great. What we're dealing with in Flint is a man who believes he is facing the end of his life, so he intends to disappear. It is given to few people in this world to disappear twice, but as he had succeeded once, the man known as James T. Kettleman was about to make his second attempt. If he did not succeed this time, he would never know it, for he would be dead. When a man has but a few months to live, he can, if he so wills, choose the manner of his going, and Kettleman had made such a choice. He was now on his way to a place of which he alone knew, and there he would die. He would die as he had lived, alone. It was ironic that he who hated the West should return there to die. But like a wild animal which knows when death is upon it, he was seeking a dark and lonely place where he could die in peace and in his own way. At this moment, no man in the railroad car looked stronger, more alive, more resolute. Yet the seed of death was in him, and the plant had but a little while to grow. People interested Kettleman only as prospective antagonists, and of the men in the car, only one seemed likely to fit that category. He was a straw-haired man with a lean and dangerous look, like a wolf among sheep. His destination was familiar only from a description given him 15 years ago, over a campfire, by a man who had often used the place for a hideout. When he left the train, he would return to the oblivion from which he had emerged 15 years earlier. Then James T. Kettleman would cease to exist, although actually he had ceased to exist a few days ago in Virginia. For the few weeks that remained to him, he would be nameless once more. Up to a point, he had planned every move. But once arrived at Flint's old hideout, there would be nothing to do but wait. Some time ago, his doctor told him he would not live a year. and most of that year had passed. Kettleman walked to the rear of the car again, glancing back at the occupants. All were asleep, or apparently asleep. The train was slowing for the long climb. Lifting his bags through the rear door, he closed it carefully behind him. The stars blinked coldly from an almost clear sky. The train whistled, the wind blew long across the high grass plains. He threw his bags to the roadbed and put a leg over the rail, hesitating one brief instant to look back into the dimly lighted car. This was the end of everything and the beginning of nothing. He put the other leg over the rail and dropped to the roadbed. He stood watching the red lights on the track of the train, which moved away, scarcely faster than a man could walk, until it rounded a curve and left no more than a humming of the rails to tell of its passing, and the long whistle of the locomotive echoing down the night sky. The dry grass bent before the wind. The seed pods rattled in the brush and along the right-of-way. James T. Kettleman was ended, and the man who had borne that name, making it feared and respected, stood now where he had stood so many years before, without a name. He was now a man without a past, as he had been a boy without one. "Goodbye," he said, but there was nobody to say the word to, and nothing to remember. For any of you who have read this book, you know that he originally disappeared while leaving Kansas. As a boy, he had been helped by a man by the name of Flint, who picked him up when he had been left somewhere, put him through school, and that man had been killed by some trail riders, and he killed them in turn. And that night, he disappeared from Kansas and went to New York, where he became a businessman, and a very successful one. He had also married, but having no real experience with women or with anybody, really. He married a woman who did not love him. She was only after his wealth. She and her father. And that was why he decided he would go west and die alone after he learned of the diagnosis of cancer. A sharp pain struck him suddenly, and he stopped abruptly, bending far and retching violently. He dropped to his knees, caught by a sudden weakness, and remained there, frightened at the agony. He had never known physical pain, although often hunger, and anything that robbed him of strength left him shaken, for his strength was all he had. Now, here at the end, he needed it desperately. Later, there would be more pain. But in the last days, his doctor had said, there would be less. And briefly, I'm going to discuss how he found out that his wife and her father were merely after his money. He was in a card game with a professional gambler. And the man was looking for trouble. "You have been looking for trouble," Kettleman said quietly. "I am offering it to you." The gambler was nervous. He touched his tongue to his lips and felt the sweat beading his forehead. "You are looking for trouble," Kettleman said. "Why?" There was no one close by. "I am going to kill you," the gambler said. "If you wish to leave the game, we can divide the pot, and I will forget what you have said." It was there then, a way out. As a gambler, he should take it. But gambling was only part of his business, and he had his pride. "I cannot. I have been paid. There are other ways to make a living, and you have chosen the wrong one. I am offering you your last chance. Get out." "I gave my word. I took their money." Kettleman had seemed almost negligent. "When you are ready, then." And after he shot the gambler, the man told him that his wife and her father were behind it. But you see, he didn't really care at that point, I think, whether he survived or not. If the man had succeeded in killing him, it would have relieved him of the burden of dying of cancer. But he failed. So he had gone west again to go back to Flint's old hideout, where he intended to die alone. However, this is where the second chance part comes in. Shortly after going to that area, he finds himself inadvertently brought into a range war. And he chooses the side of a young lady he met on the train on the way west, who owned a ranch. And in the end, he is seeing a doctor. And that doctor tells him he does not, in fact, have cancer. He has an ulcer in his stomach. And that's what makes him sick. He changes his diet and a few things of that nature. So he does not have a death sentence hanging over his head anymore. And he actually ends up marrying the girl who owned the ranch after helping her and her hands fight this range war. So that was my example of second chances for tonight. As I said, we all get those, and we always need to try to make the most of them. I hope you enjoyed this. I appreciate you listening. And any interaction or anything, that would be great. I appreciate all of that. Thank you for everything, guys. Have a good night.